Welcome to the Crushing Iron podcast. Today I took a few notes on the stuff we're talking about. Today we get into diet a little bit off the beginning. We talk about the hot and cold diets, struggles of being a vegan, juicing to feel lighter. Then we get into the Ironman Chattanooga course breakdown. We talk about the swim anxiety and how do you prepare yourself for open water swims in the pool. We also talk about starting a race upstream and how you handle that when you have downstream coming at the end, how you get warmed up and things like that. We talk about how to cross the current, and we also look at buoy lines and how do you create your own line and which way is the best solution. Then we get onto the bike course. We talk a lot about riding rollers, how you climb hills, how you descend hills, and where you should think about that on the Ironman Chat course. We also talk about the wind and how you prepare yourself for the wind that day in the morning of the race. And then we get into the run course and we look at where the tough spots are, how to handle the climbs, and what you should be doing on the descents, and running your best race, and why you should never walk a downhill. Time for a podcast.
Time for a podcast. Today, Monday, April 23rd, 2018. It is warm here, but it is rainy in Nashville, Tennessee. And we thank you for joining us
on the Crushing Iron podcast.
The Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast.
Yes. And it's 9:04 in the morning.
It is.
Beautiful day.
Beautiful day. Yeah, right. Am I the first person again you've talked to today?
No, I was at the store this morning. Little cashier banter.
At the store this morning?
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing at the store this morning?
I got to get vegetables.
Picking up a pack of Marlboros?
Vegetables. Juice stuff.
Oh, are you back on? Are we juicing again now?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little heavy.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, man. We, for those of us who aren't in that listening who aren't in the Crushing Iron Closed Facebook group, you should join. You can always search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook, and we'll let you in. It's only available and promoted if you listen to the podcast, so it's the only kind of way you know that it actually exists. But come on in and join us in there for some awesome conversation and updates and some occasional live Q&As. But Mike posted a picture of our ride on, was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday on Natchez
3 pictures.
A couple pictures, yeah. And dude, I gotta tell you, man, I don't think anything can make you feel frumpier than a cotton T-shirt underneath your snug tri-top.
Oh, that's where this is going.
I mean, I have to.
It's a cotton blend, bro.
I know it's a cotton blend. It's a solid shirt, but I gotta imagine that may have not, that may have kind of put you towards the feeling like we need to go on a little juice action.
Nah, it's not. It's. I could be sitting here naked and I could feel the same way. It's just you know how it is, man. It's like, that bloated feeling, because like when you start work, which I have been, I've been working out pretty hard. I've been swimming hard. We rode hard on Saturday, and I'm like, for me, I got to keep, like, if I'm not drinking enough, if I'm drinking too much coffee, for example, I'm not drinking enough, water moving agents.
Yeah,
I back up, and I think that's really what it is more than anything. I'm like, Jesus, man, I've been working my ass off, and I feel like, woo. So I just start juicing a little bit, man, and it gets things moving.
Makes you feel fresh.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe you should go vegan again.
Well, I'm not gonna go vegan, but I definitely start. I like the idea of leaning there a little bit. And that's just to get lighter foods in me. As it gets warmer too, that's one of the things that I've always paid attention to, like as far as diet goes, is this one thing that I read it once many years ago. I've read it many times since, but it really stuck with me. It was this idea of sort of a yogi diet, in the sense that you're eating for hot and cold and heavy and light, and depending on the time of year, really. As it gets warmer, you can't eat a lot of heavier foods because it'll be too hot and it'll bog you down and stuff like that. So that was just a natural thing. As it gets warmer, I think to not eat as dense. Oh, it's easier in the summer. That's why it's like always, I think, very difficult for people to go vegan in the north. You know what I mean? Because can you imagine eating salads all winter in Minneapolis?
Oof. I can't, but I
just think it would be very difficult, and from a how do you warm up perspective, you know.
Well, I mean, you got things like hot tea in the north. They're big on the tea up there, aren't they?
Well, that's I mean, hot tea, but is one thing, but you have to, have kind of those. I don't know. I just think it would be difficult. I mean, more. I think it's great. Whatever. It's just that I think. That seems to be one of the things is like vegans I know, they get cold easy. So I would imagine it would be even more difficult when it's 30 below.
Interesting. Maybe we should ask Kenny about that.
No, I mean it's nothing against veganism or anything. I think that's one of the hardest things about it is staying true. When it's difficult.
Yeah, that's true, and as with most things in life. So, do you feel like you're? Are you cramming right now? If this is your first time listening to the podcast, this is we're both racing Chattanooga 70.3 here in just under 4 weeks. 4 weeks from yesterday, May 20th. How do you feel like your training's going? Do you feel like you're after the ride yesterday? That was probably your longest of the year, probably longest since Louisville, I would imagine.
Since Ironman Louisville, that was probably the longest. Dude, I got to tell you, man, I felt great. I did. I went swimming after that.
Did you?
Yeah. I was driving home. I was going to go home, and I'm like, man, I'm kind of hot, so I'm going to get in the pool and just throw some strokes down. I felt great. I didn't feel like, yesterday was a tough one because it was raining all day, and I was going to go for a run, but I couldn't motivate, and I'm like, well, my legs could probably love it an extra day, so I'm going to try and do it today. But in general, I am cramming a little bit, but I feel like I'm really good spot with the bike, and I feel like I'm peaking. I mean, not peaking, but I feel like I'm moving right towards a really strong bike position, and swims feels pretty good, and I think my run's okay. It's kind of one of those things. We'll see what happens, but I'm trying to get my legs up from the bike for a good run.
Well, I would say that rides like we did on Saturday will definitely help do the trick. So we have the Natchez Trace Parkway here in Nashville. I think it's the end of it, I guess, because it's 442, maybe 444. But we ride that as much as we can. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to ride. Perfect pavement, no stoplights, no stop signs, but it is. Incredibly hilly with lots of rollers. And I'll tell you what, man, that heat kind of snuck up on me on Saturday. I was not it felt like it got close to 80.
Yeah, that was the cotton blend problem I had.
Yeah, I think that probably was too. Because I got quite a bit of sun, but yeah, it was a roaster, but it was good to get out. And I know that especially for a lot of athletes that train alone, and you and I train alone a lot as well, but it's always nice to get out and with a group and do some hard riding, and even if you're not riding together the whole time, just having somebody else in view always kind of makes things a little bit easier when you're out on the roads alone, and then a little bit more motivating too on the way back when you're just trying to sometimes just make it back to the car, which was the case for I think Wes and I as we finished up our ride on Saturday. But all in all, yeah, great weekend. And again, it's always good to connect with other athletes and ride and enjoy ourselves and go hard. And we definitely did a little bit more, I think, than we were prepared to do. At least I know I did. I went out there preparing to do 230, and I think we ended up doing 340, about 75 miles. So a little bit longer than anticipated, but hey, if you're going to go long, do it on the bike. And enjoyed it, and back to work back to work this week as we count down 27 days left to Chattanooga 70.3. And if you're not in the Crushing Iron Closed Facebook group, we have like probably close to 50 athletes in there that are going. So make sure you join the group, or you try to connect with us somehow before you're there. We'd love to meet up with as many people as possible within reason, and connect as we count down to kind of the big kickoff of the season, at least here in the Southeast, with Chattanooga 70.3.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Well, let's hope so. I know a lot of athletes have trained hard. It's been kind of we posted something in the closed Facebook group months and months and months ago, long before it sold out, about trying to see how many people we could get there, just because I think it'd be fun to, meet a bunch of people and feel supported, and athletes coming into town. And so I think it'll be a great experience. I've never done the race before, so I'm really excited to do the course.
Oh, you want me to tell you about the course?
Go for it, man. Yeah, it's been definitely one I've wanted to do, but when it came to Nashville, or came to Tennessee rather, I was super pumped for it, and then didn't get around to doing it. Then we moved away for 2 years, and then I think last year we had just moved back to town, maybe like a week before. But this year I told myself, hey, when it comes up, Chattanooga's an awesome place. Incredibly, I would say one of, if not the most spectator / family friendly cities you will ever come to, in terms of things to do with the family, and being able to basically park the day you get there and then never get in your car again. Even for the family to do things with the aquarium and the different museums down there and stuff. So I decided to as they say, pull the trigger and sign up. So I'm pumped, man. Pumped to meet everybody. Pumped to do another new course. But yeah, I'd love if you could give me. I'm sure other athletes that are listening to this podcast would love a little course breakdown too. So I'll just give you the floor.
Yeah, it's really great if you can stay downtown, but there's a lot of real good access hotels, 10, 15 minutes away all over the place. It's pretty easy to get in there. They're very, that town in general is very welcoming to triathlon. I mean, that's just sort of how they build their thing. And everybody just, for the most part, until you get up in the hills, in certain places, I hear there's some weirdness that happens up there and some riders, but for the course, for this downtown area, they all love it. And so I think that that one of the questions, for example, I get a lot is how they do because the swim start is across the river from transition and up about maybe a quarter mile, half mile or something. It's not far, but I mean it would be to walk. It's probably close to a mile from transition to swim start, but they have shuttle buses that they line up right along the transition area, and you just jump in, and they kind of basically whisk you over the bridge and drop you off back there, and then you go up and you line up. And I think it was a self-seed rolling start last year when we got in. You can pick where you want to start.
They shortened the swim a little bit last year too.
Yeah,
for the age groupers, they did the pros, and then they cut it short for the age groupers.
Yeah,
so if you're looking at times from last year, don't get that excited. It is a traditionally fast swim course, I would say, in general. But last year, if you're not aware, last year they did shorten the swim after the professionals went in.
Yeah, we sat there, and that was one of the things I was going to say. We got there. It's one of those things where you got to kind of like gauge your time as to like how long it's going to take once the race starts until you walk up, and it's a wetsuit race. And I think it usually is, right? Probably a wetsuit race. So
yeah, I think I'd be shocked if it wasn't a wetsuit race, especially with that it's not a stagnant body of water as well.
And we got there, I don't want to say like super early, but a good half hour. I was standing in line, and then you think you're like 15 minutes out, so 10 minutes out you put on your wetsuit, and it was pretty warm that morning. I remember I was definitely getting hot in that wetsuit. I was so glad that I brought a cold bottle of water with ice in it to kind of just drip down the back of my wetsuit, because what happened was we were going to start at, say, whatever it was, 8 o'clock, or say 7, I guess it would be. And after the pros went out and they saw them struggling to get upstream to make that corner, like some of the pros were really struggling to get to the corner and to go across and then go down the stream. So right after this pros, they decided they were not going to make us swim upstream. So they went out and started moving buoys around. And, that process took about 15 minutes or more. I don't know how long it took, but we're standing in our wetsuits because we think we're ready to go. And all of a sudden you're in your wetsuit for 35, 40 minutes in kind of warm temperature. So that's just one thing I thought about letting people know is, just bring some water up there. They have water. I think there's a station, and then but you walk past it and then you get in line. So then you're, kind of stuck with what you got basically. So yeah, that's the thing. And I don't know if it was like a extremely rainy time. I think it was kind of rainy the 4 or 5 days before that, and the current got pretty harsh. So hopefully they won't shorten it again this year. But I think what you have about 300 to 400 yards upstream, and then you got to cross, and then the rest is downstream. So, that's one of those things. And I want to ask you about this, actually. I'm going to bring you in as I go through certain things, and this is one of them.
I love how we're switching roles today.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm all in. Go for it.
That's what happens when I get up and start juicing. See, I am no longer the color man. I am the play-by-play guy. And I need you for the color. I need the...
Got it, man. I'm all color all the time.
Okay, so I'm getting in. You jump off the pier, and you're swimming upstream right out of the gate. How do you handle that one? I mean, you got to be ready.
You do have to be ready. And I would say, in this is something that you and I have talked about ad nauseum, as far as swim starts go, is the athlete's ability, or oftentimes an athlete's inability, to be comfortable starting out strong and fast. And especially with the swim like this, and you and I, touched on this just a little bit on our way back from Texas, actually. I said, sometimes I think, kind of contrary to what I used to think, in that being that I'm a stronger swimmer, you always think, all right, well, stronger swimmers won't pick, what I would say are more swim-friendly courses, like Chattanooga or Augusta. Those are both super friendly swim-friendly courses, because the majority of the swim courses downstream. And I would say, I like to choose tougher courses because it's more of an advantage. But what I think I found is that everyone else thinks the same way. So you get so many fast swimmers hit up these open water tough swims, and then they won't go to swims like Chattanooga because it can be much easier. Having said that, the mindset that you should, or that can kind of overcome you into like a point of just laziness for triathletes especially, is always that the swim doesn't matter, or especially when you get to on like Ironman Louisville or the full Ironman in Chattanooga, where it's almost all downstream. It's basically, I don't really have to train for the swim because it's that easy. And it's going to be wetsuit legal, so I can just float. Hey, if that's your mentality and you're just a floater, then okay, sure, whatever, go for it. However, on a race like Chattanooga 70.3, you might get excited for a swift current downstream, but you also have a swift current you have to swim against. And having that at the very, very front end of your swim can be a challenge. And here's why. A lot of athletes already struggle with that pre-race first 500 meter anxiety. Your heart rate's already jamming. You're already super excited. You may not like contact. You may not like all the people, all the splish splashing going around. You're probably already in your wetsuit. You've been there for 20 minutes. Your heart rate's already up. A lot of athletes don't even like their wetsuit because it makes them feel claustrophobic. So then you're going to throw them in a body of water that is now moving against them. Mm-hmm. And it is, I don't want to say it is worst case scenario depending on how hard the current is. So now you have to up your stroke rate, which a lot of athletes really, really struggle with having a high turnover because they have fallen in love with like the total immersion of calm and collected and chilled out swim stroke, and where you're taking 2 strokes forward and 1 stroke back with the current. Out of the gate, you want to be able to have a fast, powerful turnover, and you need to be prepared for it. You need to be able to do swim workouts where you start out doing 100s, 200s, 300s very, very fast, and then slowly bringing yourself down into what would be more of your downstream stroke, which would be long, strong, with the current, gathering your breath. But even if you're looking at just completing and not just competing, and you're really looking to not just finish, but you're looking to race it, be prepared to come out of the gate for those first 1, 2, 3, those first 4 buoys before you make the turn with a fast turnover, because you're going to be going against a current with the most people you're probably going to come into contact for the duration of the swim, just because it's the very beginning and you're starting in a wave, so it's not going to have time to thin people out. And with the going against the current, it's going to jam pack and kind of bog down people in general, especially going around that first buoy, depending on what the current and the flow rate is that day. But yeah, you need to come prepared. Fast arms, fast stroke, work hard, prepare to get after it. And then also in the same vein, prepare to relax on the way back in. I'm not saying coast and be lazy. I'm just saying once you do your fast turn, you get to be going with the current. Now it's time to elongate those strokes, really focus on reaching far, finishing far back, long and strong, taking about as much breath, and sighting perfectly. But it is really, it's a tale of 2 swims. Luckily, the hardest part is the shortest part, but they make it that way on purpose. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't take a swim like this for granted, because I think a lot of times that people are surprised how much closer to their regular 1.2 mile race swim times that this course yields. I mean, I was looking back at not this last year, but the previous year's swim times for the age group I'm in, and they're not really that far off. You know, they're maybe like 2 or 3 minutes, and I think a lot of athletes anticipate like a 7, 8, 9 minute turnafull.
Oh yeah, you mean they're more accurate? They're more normal than people would.
Yeah, they're much more normal. This isn't like, you know, a full distance where the almost the entire thing is downstream.
Yeah, it's not like Augusta.
Yeah, this is, I would say, you know, a fifth of it is up, you know, a fifth to 2/5 is upstream, and the rest is down. And you still have to, the way the buoys are marked, you go around that island and you're coming out to the left, and then even to that point, you're going with the current, but you need to sight correctly too, because you're getting closer to shore. And so, you know, if you've done a river swim and you look into how you should place yourself, you know, the middle of the river is the fastest, and because it's deeper, and so it's flowing faster. But the majority of this race, because of that McClellan Island is smack dab in the middle, you're rarely ever in the middle of it. You're either on the side of it or you cut across the front of it, and then after you go across the front, now you're pointing back, so you're never really in the middle of the river either. So definitely not one of those swims to, you know, poo-poo, but one you should definitely be prepared to go out fast. And I would not look at this as like one of those piece of cake swims like a lot of athletes do.
Yeah, and then you have that when you finally get to the first turn, you got that. That's about the only time you're going to be in the middle of the river is when you're crossing it. So that can be
exactly, yeah,
a little hairy too. I don't know how they must like offset those buoys a little bit, right? They can't just put it straight across, right? Or
yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now. It's interesting. It's you know, it's you come out, you go down, then you really try and cut like to the tip of the island, and then once you cut the tip, which is right there in the middle, aka the fastest part of the river, after that point, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 buoys, you're angling towards the edge again. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's you know, it's really, if you've ever done Ironman Louisville, it's very much like the last little section where you come across that turn, and you can if you want to, instead of hugging the buoys to the right, which is, you know, everybody should do this unless you're in the 35, 39 age group, then you should totally disregard what I'm about to say. Once you make that turn, and it's the same thing in Louisville, you don't have to hug the buoys on the right, and they'll tell you this at the pre-race, whatever. Just keep the buoys on your right. Well, the great thing about this course is when you make that cutover on McClellan Island, the buoys are to your right, and the the finishing chute, the big arch or whatever, is on your left. So at this point, you no longer need to be sighting off the right. You need to sight straight ahead and make your mark to the closest, the straightest line you possibly can to make that finishing chute. Very much like, again, at Louisville, where I know when I do it, I won't even get close to the buoys once I make that final underpass to the bridge. I swim incredibly close to like that cement, that walkway where you can basically walk up and down the river, and I hug that because it brings me straight to the finish. And so that's just a little tip for everyone, again, unless you're 35, 39 age group, and then it's actually you can get disqualified. So, but
actually what I was saying though is like when you get up to the first turn buoy, there's another one straight across. So you're not doing that like Louisville.
Right. Yep. There is one straight across, and
that's the one that always makes me wonder. Is like if you're going across current, you got to kind of shoot to the high side of that thing, or you're going to
exactly. Yep. You never want to get caught on the inside of a buoy with the current.
But it has to be dropped down river a little bit because I can't imagine.
I would think it's got to be. I mean, it doesn't look that way on the course map, but then again, these buoys aren't going to look anything like they are on the water either.
Yeah.
Like the ones at Texas looked like my 2-year-old was trying to draw a straight line.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real, very real thing too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like you, like you said. I mean, I swear. I mean, I could do I don't know dozens of races, and every time I get out there in the water, something about it just feels weird and different, and the buoys look weird. Like they're harder to see, or it's just it's always kind of a different challenge. It seems like, as far as where they lay them, and sometimes they feel straight, sometimes they don't, and then it's like the old, I've heard people say just trust the buoy line because they try to lay it out in the straightest line, and it's usually the shortest. But and like what you're saying, I think does make sense if you're a really good swimmer and you can kind of do that. But sometimes if you're not strong, you're not a good sighter, when you start getting out in no man's land and trying to do your own thing, that can really work against you too,
Yep.
So it might, for 90%, 95% of the swimmers, it probably is best just to kind of stay on the buoy line for this kind of deal. Because you just, I don't know, it can go wrong in a hurry.
Very true. I would say unless you're, then that is a great point. I would say like unless you're an incredibly competent, you are incredibly competent in your ability to sight and swim straight and navigate on your own, then the best likely scenario for you, the athlete, is to in fact just hug those buoys to stay on the right because they are going to take you to the finish. If you're not competent and feel very confident that you can navigate and self-correct yourself, or you can't even see the chute, then I would definitely highly suggest, just like you said, stick with the route that's laid out. You have to be very confident in your experience and your ability to kind of get away, because more oftentimes if you do that, you're going to kind of go alone. And one of the great things too about swimming close to buoys is you don't always have to sight off of them. You can just sight off the 10 people in front of you. Because you basically know, or you /hope that you're all kind of herding in the same direction. And so, and as with all things, depending on how swift the current is, heck, I mean, you don't want to get off course much either.
That's a really good question too, because like, if you get so zoned in on buoys and trying to be straight and everything, or do you just sort of like, it's a hard thing to do, like you said, is sort of trust a pack of 10 people in front of you, but like out of 10, you figure like 7 of them got to have it pretty dialed in. But there's something to be said for me for kind of not lasering in on buoys, but just sort of going in the direction, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Just kind of like trusting the flow of the swimmers too, because I don't know, if I start like lining, because if you're going straight at a buoy, that doesn't mean you're going the shortest distance in a way. Does that make sense too? Like if you're coming out wide and you kind of like you're going straight at it, that doesn't mean you're going towards the finish line the shortest way. You could be going back and forth. And I don't know. It swims kind of. It's almost like one of those things where I just feel like without stressing it too hard and just kind of go with the flow and just look for the people and just kind of go where they're going and stuff like that for the most part. Unless you're top notch, like you and maybe 150 other people that are just have their plan.
Yeah, and even then, like you have to. I mean, I won't even make a decision on like what. Navigation wise, what line I'll take until probably we hit the upstream, or you see what the actual flow rate is, because I mean, if it's just like, if you're shooting down river, the other thing is like, you don't have much room for error. If it's a really quick current, then if you're going to sight on your own and you're going to basically forego the luxury of keeping the buoys to your right, which is most triathletes' dream, then you better sure as hell be confident that you can get from point A to point B on your own with little to no help from sighting off another swimmer and or the buoys. Because if you go off even a little bit, then you're going to get stuck. Then again, buoys on your right, the finishing chute is to the left and angled to the left. There's only so far left you can go until you're going to be in the right spot anyway. But yeah, I mean, generally, it's always best unless you feel really confident to just stick with the herd. Kind of like they say, like in trail running, if you only really need to know the course if you plan on being first. Everything else, if you don't know the course, you could just follow the person in front of you, which is more oftentimes than not the best route to take for many swimmers.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, you get out to the left, climb up a little staircase, and then you run down the boardwalk. And I think it's the same little hill that you got to climb up as they use in the fall. For some reason I can't remember. I almost feel like they. In the half, I feel like they pushed us up this. Maybe that was for another triathlon I did. Maybe that's what that was. It was the waterfront triathlon.
The waterfront.
Yeah, they went up a different way. But otherwise, at this half, you run down the boardwalk for maybe 200 yards out of the water, 150, 200 yards, and then you take a left and go up and transition, which is up a steep little hill. But there's a lot of people around there, and then you get into the bike course, and it's like, I don't know if you are like this way, but I have very little recollection of specifics on bike courses. Like I have a general sense that for the first 10 miles or so, it's a pretty flat ride. I feel like the wind is usually behind you when you're leaving, but I could be wrong on that too. And then it's 10 miles out to the loop roughly, and it's a bumpy ride for part of that. I mean, there's some railroad tracks you got to deal with when you come out of right out of transition in the first 5 miles or something like that. I feel like it's fairly flat, and then you get into the loop, which basically at about mile 23, I think, is the hill that everybody should be prepared for. And it's a turn to the left, and then you go up this hill, and it's a pretty nice little hill. And then it's pretty fast after that, and then you get into the mile 43, 44, there's another pretty big climb, and then there's a bomber descent, and then you got the 10 miles back. So in the middle, there's some rollers out there, and I think it's 1,800 feet or 2,000 feet of elevation for that whole ride. Does that sound about right? Have any idea? Yeah.
Sorry, I cut out a little bit.
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah, it's a rolling course. I mean, I've heard everything from 1,800 to 2,400 feet. But then again, I rode with, Wes and I rode basically neck and neck together the exact same route on Saturday, and our GPSs were 200 feet of elevation gain difference. So it's a rolling course. I mean, I wouldn't, from the times that I've seen it, people that I know that have raced it, I would say that it is fair to fast. Just because listen, like, and you know this just as well as anybody, as much as we've ridden the trace, like, it's not always about the elevation.
Mm-hmm.
It's about where the elevation is placed and what you can do after you've climbed said elevation. Like on the trace, you can actually get some pretty good speed because, yes, are the uphills long? Absolutely. But a lot of the downhills are too. And outside of the first, 12 miles of the trace, which is like probably the best technical riding in terms of turns, and just you're never basically ever in the same gear. You're always changing. But after that, you can get in grooves. And so, unlike a course like Wisconsin, to where like you get these short pinchers, and then, well, you don't even get to take advantage of it, because when you get to the bottom of the next one, you have like a sharp left turn. So it's all about how you can take advantage of, because there is, you got to go up, but you got to come down too. And I think that this is one of those courses, just having looked at it, I'm looking at it right now, and I think the Ironman website specifically says, let's see, that it has, 2,218 feet of climbing. But if you look at it in terms of sections, it definitely looks like from about the 30-mile point home is a lot more friendlier, besides the one big pincher around the 40-ish mile marker. But I would just say it's rolling, and I've never ridden the course, but from athletes I've talked to, this is one of those rolling courses. Even with some good feet of gain, you should be able to stay in your aero position for, I would say, 90 to 95% of the ride. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fair, I think.
Yeah, I mean, unless you absolutely want to get out of it. And I'm talking like not after like the first mile, the last mile, where there's some turns and stuff and getting out and getting situated. But I think there's only maybe like 2 hills that you would maybe want to think about sitting up in. But the rest of it, you should be able to stay aero and keep your momentum going over the one roller and into the next.
Mm-hmm. My recall on that first hill is that most people are going to end up getting out of aero. That second one, it seems like a longer climb to me.
It is, yeah.
And it's probably not as steep, and I think you can ride that in aero. But like after that one, that's a bomber. And, that people in aero on that, there's a couple places where it's pretty fast. And I feel like that's a 40-mile-an-hour downhill right there after that one.
Is there a turn at the bottom, or can you actually?
Well, yeah, I think there is a turn at the bottom, and then that's when you kind of go back out onto the stick part of the thing.
Oh yeah, back home.
Yeah, there may be a turn, but it's one of those things where I just don't feel super comfortable going that fast in aero. But otherwise, I get low and hang on to the bars. But yeah, I think for the most part it is an aero course. And again, I get back into this thing, and this is where I hope, we've been riding at the trace, and I've been kind of thinking about it a lot, is these rollers and making sure I'm in the right gear so that I can get over them without like frying my quads, and being in good shape when I get to the top and coming out and taking advantage of some of that downhill speed on the other side.
Yeah,
that's where I'm really kind of focused. And my thing is just to sort of set a internal deal until I get back to that stick and see how I feel, because you got 10 miles roughly of pretty flat, fast. It's not super. If you hit the wind coming in, that could be demoralizing.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So that's the other thing I got in mind, is I really want to check the wind, and I want to take advantage. You almost have to. Like if it's going to be at your back that first 10 miles, you're going to just have to go a little bit faster than you might have planned.
Go a little bit faster, or go a little bit harder.
Well, go a little. I think that, like for a guy like me who always, I don't have a power meter, so in my mind, I'm sitting here going, okay, if I want to average 21 miles an hour on this course, and if I've got a nice strong tailwind coming out of transition for 10 miles, I'm going to use it. Yeah, so I don't know, going a little bit faster and a little. I don't know about hard. I know what you're saying. Yeah, so I'm going to maybe go a little bit harder in relation to the speed. So I basically I'll be riding with the correct power. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, what you're saying is if you're a person, like if you have a tailwind and you're going on feel, because a lot of athletes don't have power, or they're going by HR and they know what HR usually gets them what speed. Don't slow down on a section if you've got a tailwind, like thinking that you're going too fast, when in fact you should be letting the course do that work for you, because on the way back you're gonna basically come out pretty even. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of those things where I have rarely, looked at the wind the morning. I mean, because I don't know where it's coming from. And sometimes you might think you have the wind, and you might just be adrenaline. So it might, I want to kind of take a look at maybe where that wind is blowing from that morning, I guess is what I'm getting at too. Actually knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I've jumped in rivers before where we swam a box, like at Ashland City. I didn't even know which way the current was moving. That's problematic.
Yeah, you need to. Those are the little bitty things you kind of need. You need to know, and that's like something that I really started to pay attention to when I had a race like Texas. Was you got to know, like you can't just say, oh, it's going to be windy. Okay, well, that's kind of relative. Is it going to be? Am I looking at a tailwind the whole way out like I was, and a headwind the whole way back? Am I looking at crosswinds? Is it likely to change? And if it's going to change, what time is it supposed to change? And given that, the weather's not always correct, you should at least have a game plan, knowing, like I did on the way back, or on the way out with my headwind, or the tailwind rather, at Texas, that I know I'm getting assistance, and I know I'm going to pay for it on the way back. So I better use this to the speed to the best of my ability, but at the same time save as much energy as I can, because I'm going to need it to go on the return trip. Mm-hmm. Versus if I had also been paying attention, I knew it was crosswinds, well, then that changes up the whole game. Then you're looking at more of an absolute even power the entire time. And then obviously you're looking at maybe some equipment changes. So yeah, there's definitely a lot, with race morning, when you have a current in the swim and you have wind on the bike that may or may not play a role in your splits, or your how you're trying to manage your effort throughout the 56 miles that you need to be aware of and be prepared to kind of make changes on the fly if you feel necessary.
Do they have a device like that? Somebody should invent something like that.
They do.
Oh, they do? So they have something on your bike that it can give you which way the wind's coming from?
They don't have something on the bike, but so there's a website called bestbikesplit.com,
Mm-hmm.
and what you do is you can go in there and you can basically put in your bike, your wheels, your components, your rider position, everything. So they basically have a really, really good idea of what your CDA is, and your drag or rolling resistance, all the things that they use to kind of correlate, like. They'll basically take your watts and the rider's weight plus the bike, and basically tell you how fast, given your power, you'll be able to go on a course.
Yeah, I just meant.
And they can also, not on the fly, but they can also have, if you have the premium version, you can also click on the tab, and they will update your power plan based on the weather and the wind.
Mm.
So if certain sections are going to be windier than others, then it'll tell you via section you need to average this power instead of this power if you want to end with this power. And so while I can't give you real-time on-the-fly notifications, it can give you, something in relative proximity of what you should do the night before if you wake up at like the butt crack of dawn super early in the morning.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Imagine how effective I could be if I used some of this technology on my bike.
But then you'd be like, that'd be like a whiteboard sacrilege.
Yeah, it would. I'd be overthinking it.
Yeah, you'd be overthinking it, man. You just need to do your thing and have that internal calibrated power meter.
You just need to let it rip. That's where I'm going, man.
So the bike is good, fair, but can be probably faster than what you think the elevation is if you're racing it. What about the run?
The run. Okay, so it's basically a truncated version of the full, and it's not okay. It's sneaky. That's the best way I'm going to put this.
Yeah, the elevation profile looks sneaky.
Yeah, it's kind of probably like a little bit of like a Muncie kind of run or something, where you're like, this just rolls
sneakiest run ever.
Yeah,
Muncie.
You when you come out of transition, one of the first things you have to do at the half and or the full at Chattanooga is run up this long hill right out of transition. And we've all seen it if we've been there spectating. You walk up, and it's a kind of a long, I don't want to say beast. It's not friendly, but when you do the half, you come out of transition, you run the other way back towards where you came in on the bike for about, I don't know, quarter mile, a little over a quarter mile, maybe half mile, because they're trying to get a mile out of that or something. So then that's the kind of was the bummer to me. It was like I was coming out of there ready to run up that hill, and they sent me the other way for like, half mile, 3/4 of a mile to do a turnaround, and then you come back and run along the boardwalk again, and then you run up that long hill right out of the gate. So your first mile or so at this is uphill. Well, other than that turnaround, but like that's the thing you always got to be thinking about. And as far as like, again, I'm going to defer to you. A lot of people can have a tendency to come off the bike too hot. And when you got that hill staring at you, that can be, I think, one of those sneaky problems that people have on this course, because it isn't deathly troublesome, the run, but I just remember it being harder than I thought it was going to be. And I wonder sometimes if it's because I might be burning a few biscuits going up that hill.
Well, I think that when you're coming out, you go down that downhill, which is quick, and then, but you have those first two little pinchers on the way out in the first like mile and a half before it goes down gradual. I think a lot of people underestimate at the beginning how tough how you can overexert yourself and pay for it later on in the race. Because, and they tend to kind of gravitate towards and latch on to the pace after those first 4 miles. But if you look at, the first 4 miles, the really only the difficult hilly part in the first 4 is that first hill and that pincher right after it. Other than that, you got about a mile and a half stretch, it looks like, of almost downhill to like slight rollers. Then you climb up again, then you go straight, then you got those two big pinchers on the way out, and then come back towards town to begin to make your second loop. And man, if you kind of take away the first 4 miles and look at it as a 9-mile run, that's a good one. I mean, you've got some really big pinchers in there that can take a lot out of you, and you end with them is the thing, in the finish, and then you got the downhill finish. So you want to be able to listen. You've got some, just like kind of on the bike course, you've got some downhills on the run as well. If you go, balls to the wall on the uphill, you're not going to have the gas to even hit that downhill, because you're going to be just catching your breath to stay winded, or to not be winded. And I've always said, and I was taught this a long time ago, on the bike you should work the uphills and then not work as much on the downhills, because the return on investment you get from working an uphill and the time you save is much greater than if you try to pound the pedals going downhill to go from 30 miles an hour to 31 miles an hour, versus actually putting forth a really good effort going up a hill. And then the reverse is said for running. You should short, choppy, get up powerful, get up to the top, and then be able to really, really work the downhills, because your return on investment on running a downhill and the extra speed and the elongated or shortened stride, whichever you choose to take, the time you gain on the downhill from being able to really, really push it far outweighs with the energy expenditure what you might gain by trying to sprint up an uphill. But you see athletes do it all the time. They, listen, rule number 1, don't ever walk a downhill. But you'll see a lot of people do it, because they've tried so hard to run up this hill. There's this downhill stretch where they're like leaning back on their heels, and you'll see it on course. we saw it when I went and watched Chattanooga last year at 70.3 World Championships. Is you see a lot of athletes running down on their heels because they're trying to slow down and catch their breath because they went up some of these hills too fast to where they weren't able to actually take advantage of the downhills. And to the same extent, downhills can hurt.
Yeah.
And I think they hurt. That's the worst, most kind of quad busting work you can do on running is running downhill. Every time we get done with doing like a Percy Warner run, it's never the hills that I feel, it's the downhills that I end up feeling like a day or two later.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually where people get injured too. Some of those steeper downhills in the training and things like that, I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I should say that big hill that you come out of transition and run up, you only do that once. You only climb that once, and then you run down a road for about 2 miles. You go behind a Burger King through a parking lot, and then you get onto the greenway, and the first thing you do is go the opposite direction for a turnaround, which is probably my least favorite part of that. That's the other thing about this run is it's not like crazy turns like you faced in Texas, but there's a lot of turns.
Yeah, I do see that. There are quite a few turns.
You do that turnaround, and then you come along the greenway, and there's just little jets and turns in that greenway, and then I think there's another little turnaround in the greenway at some point, and then you come when you come out of the greenway, though. I think that's about 4.5 miles into the run, 4 to 4.5, 5, depending on which loop it is. Then that's the neighborhood pincher. That's the one that gets everybody. Most people walk. A lot of people walk up that hill.
Is that the one close to Riverside?
Yeah, I was looking at that elevation map. I couldn't quite pin it down because you go up that neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I wish I actually had a home on that street because it's just awesome. But you go up there, and there's an aid station at the top, and then you kind of like go this little stairway down to the road, and that's when you cross over the bridge.
Got it.
So there will be some elevation on that bridge as well, and then you can peek on the bridge and kind of go down the bridge, and then there's this little turnaround that goes under. You don't go over the Barlow side and go up the hard parts where the fall is.
Oh yeah, so you go over Veterans Bridge, then you do kind of a U-turn before you get to the nitty-gritty of Barton Avenue.
Yeah, what you don't do, you do like a right turn that goes under the bridge and comes back up on the north side of Chattanooga, and there's a little hill there, and then you get to the pedestrian bridge and cross that, and then you're setting yourself either up for the second loop or the finish line.
Got it.
So those bridges, you know how those bridges are. They're not terrible, but they're definitely, you're going up as you're crossing a river. So they can wreak a little havoc. That pedestrian bridge has those speed bumps too, and I can't, like depending on what kind of shape you're in, speed bumps.
Really do. They feel like miniature walls. Yeah, it's you raise those speed up. You don't want to get hit by a sniper and go down.
Yeah. So that's all I would say is that first, the road part and then the greenway part are relatively flat, and then there's that pincher right when you come out of the greenway, go into a neighborhood, and you'll recognize it right away. It's like it looks really long. It's not terrible, but it can play a role if you're not ready for it. So,
and what's the finish line like?
The finish line is awesome. I mean, you come over the pedestrian bridge the second time, and then you do the wheel around to the left instead of going back out to the right to go the second loop, and then it's all downhill from there. Literally, you're flying down there if you want to be. So it's probably from the peak of the pedestrian bridge to the finish line is probably what? Half mile?
Probably, yeah.
Half mile-ish. So that last half mile is all downhill.
Yeah, you make that kind of turn underneath, and then the finish line is near.
Mm-hmm. So you're set once you get to the pedestrian bridge, the middle of it the second time, and then it's just kind of flat to straight downhill.
Got it.
All the way to the finish line, and that's when I get there, and I'll see CC sitting there in his medal waiting for me. It's funny. Last year we had the Crushing Iron War when I made that graphic. It was me and my buddy our buddy CC, and I was, we had kind of set it up like I was racing him the whole year, and we were kind of stealth training and the whole 9 yards, and I made this graphic like the takeoff on the Iron War, and so this year he said, dude, because he hasn't been able to train as much because he's back and forth to Charlotte and he's trying to move here and he's got soccer weekends. And he said, man, instead of the Crushing Iron War, I think this year's going to be the Crushing Iron preseason exhibition game. He's not too sure about the.
Yeah.
I thought he rode good the other day, though.
I thought he did too, man.
I mean, for a guy who hasn't been outside.
I know. He said he may have been a little wrecked, I think, the next morning. But hey, man, if you can go out and put that kind of work and do, just under 60 miles, I think, for you guys, that's a hard 60. And I know that when he rode with us those first 10 miles back from the Overlook turnaround, we were throwing it down, and he hung on pretty good. So yeah, good ride, definitely a good ride for him. So still plenty of time to be able to go in and feel fresh and peak just at the right time on race day.
Fresh.
That's
I'm
right.
not a huge soccer fan, but I really like the fact that his daughters play soccer. And he has to go watch the games. He can't train.
That's right, man. Every single weekend.
Oh, jeez. And then you just hang out and hang around the C26 crew after your race and celebrate.
Yep. Lots of celebrating, shake hands, hug, reminisce, share war stories, and hey, hopefully everyone has a fantastic race. Hopefully everybody's had a great lead up. I know this is a lot of athletes' first really big race of the year, if not their biggest race of the year. And so hope training is going well for everyone. We are looking forward to meeting and seeing everyone around town and being able to connect. And we'll be cheering and high-fiving and lending out support all day on the course. It'll be always nice to see friendly faces and people. So if you see any Crushing Iron or C26 gear, make sure you swap pleasantries and let's make sure we motivate each other to finish strong and race as well, as best we can. And so we got 4 weeks left. Most people 2 weeks or 3 weeks left of really hard work. And then it's time to go. So I'm excited. It'll be a fun time, and looking forward to spending some time in the city and again racing a new event for me this year.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It's a good one. It's a great place. It's a good race. It's it's challenging. It's fair. It's fun.
Fair and fun.
Fast.
It's probably a good one.
Fair and fun. And we'll have a lot of people there. So connect with us beforehand. Get in the group. Let us know you're going to be down there, and we'll start making some plans. I mean, it's a thing, man.
That's the thing.
Here, I'm going to go on a quick one.
Oh, here we go.
I love the idea that we're going to have 50 people there, and it's going to be awesome. But it's just I think we need to all kind of shoot for after the race. Hopefully, most people are staying that Sunday night. That was sort of the demand I placed on most people. Rather than getting done with your race and jumping in your car and driving 6 hours, just chill for a minute and let's meet some people and get to know each other.
If not the night, hopefully you've stayed or you're somewhere close by. At least stick around for an afternoon or early evening get together. And then you can head back.
Yeah.
And we can get together and
find someone with a room and borrow their shower, take a nap. I mean, that might be going a little far, but
unless you're
it's happened before. I've done that before.
I'm sure you've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, I think offer my room shower to somebody that's staying way out, that wants to kind of hang around, but they feel a little, salty.
There you go. Open invitation. If you are needing a shower or a nap, you can go see Mike Tarrolly at the Holiday Inn and Suites. And he'll have at least 25 or 30 spare room keys we'll be giving out on Friday and Saturday to lucky Crushing Iron subscribers and listeners. So if you're in, that's what we'll do. We'll have do one of those kind of live scavenger hunts, and Mike's gonna drop, we'll say 30 room key cards for Sunday showers and naps all around downtown Chattanooga with clues and questions about the podcast that only listeners would know about. So be prepared. Catch up on the podcast. Make sure you've listened. And if you are fairly new, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We release on Mondays and Thursdays. And after you feel you have a good enough sampling, please take the time to leave us a review on iTunes. They're incredibly helpful for listeners to find us, and then they're also helpful for Mike and I to be able to read the feedback and make changes and make sure we are doing the best that we can for our listeners. And if you feel like we do a really, really good job, you can always go to our website, crushingiron.com, and make a podcast pledge. All of those podcast pledge donations go to helping us cover the expense of this free podcast
and the time.
And the time, yeah, we do put a lot of time in this.
I was thinking about that this morning, but go ahead.
Listen, man, if you want to go off on another tangent,
No. It's just we love it. We love doing it. We
love it, and
but that's 150 some podcasts every day, twice a week.
Yeah, twice a week, uninterrupted, with no sponsors and advertisers, and we would love to keep it that way. And make these what are basically about an hour-long podcasts. We'd like to always make it 60 minutes and not 45 minutes of content and 15 minutes of advertisers. So if you could, it would be much appreciated. We love nice emails. We love nice Facebook messages. We love high fives and hugs, but it's always also helpful to help in paying for the storage and the time and the things that we put into this to help us out a little bit. So, and everyone who's done it, very much appreciated. You will definitely be rewarded and continue to be rewarded down the road.
With high fives.
And hugs.
Okay, that wraps it up. I didn't get a chance to talk about any of the documentaries I watched last night, but maybe next time. Alrighty. I will see you in a little bit.
See you, dude.
All right, bye.